to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and my wife Louise Thiessen here today, sitting in for Cindie Chavez. Today is Tuesday, January 2nd, 2018. Happy New Year, everybody. 8 a.m. Eastern Time. This is our first of two broadcasts, of course, for the day, and it's nice to be back on the air again. I mean, we like taking the time off, and it was great to take New Year's off, but it's always good to be back, too, because that's a lot of fun. Unfortunately, Cindie woke up this morning with a bad head cold. She could hardly even talk, so she can't join us today, and she'll probably be out tomorrow as well. But Louise has consented to sit in, which somehow seems actually quite appropriate because, Louise, you and I started this whole thing together 5.5 years ago.
We most certainly did. And before we get started, I just want to say Happy New Year to you and to all your listeners. It's looking like it's going to be a fantastic year.
I think it's going to be.
I'm glad to be able to sit in and to share my thoughts with you today.
Oh, I'm glad that you're able to sit in. It certainly is a lot easier than doing a show yourself, as I know you're aware of it. Just talking monotone for the rest of the day is not the easiest thing to do. But when you have somebody to talk to, it's so much more fun. And besides, we've got some stuff to talk about. I'll clue listeners in that Louise and I like to do something where we basically read to each other from the same book. We actually originally did that, believe it or not, with the Harry Potter series, which was a lot of fun. And recently I suggested to her, well, we're both spending more time on Law of Attraction stuff, so why don't we take some of the Abraham Hicks books and do the same thing? And she readily agreed. And so we have been diving into the vortex. And actually, I guess you're not supposed to dive into the vortex. You're just supposed to be there. But we dove in.
We certainly did. Good results. With
good results so far. Yeah, it's been interesting, the conversations we've been having. Before we get into that, though, we usually try to start each day, each podcast with some of the wins, some of the good things that have been going on in our lives. And I know I haven't given you a whole lot of time to think of it, but have you thought about anything really good that's going on in the last 24 hours, the last week, anything you want to bring up as a win?
Oh, certainly. Well, for the listeners, I went to Walt's, 2.5 weeks ago and said, if we're going to continue to expand, that is that word, our involvement in Law of Attraction, be it our understanding, our practice of it, we needed to find more people who were on the same vibrational level. And you most generously did some searching. And the good news is we have found people. As soon as you put out the word, people started responding. And the win for me is twofold in that we met a lovely couple a week and a half ago for dinner. Was it even that long ago? Doesn't matter. And had a great conversation. We actually closed the restaurant we were in. We sat there for 3 hours eating and talking, which was wonderful. And they invited us to a New Year's Eve activity, ceremony, I'm not sure just what to call it, in which we burnt our burdens and sent our hopes skyward and ran into somebody we actually knew from a different aspect of our lives. So the widening of our friends and acquaintances is already taking off. I'm looking forward to even more of that this year.
Yeah, it was really wild when we ran into Marilyn. I've known Marilyn for well over 10, 15 years, something like that, from swing dances. She was a swing dance partner for the longest time. And, of course, Louise, you'd met her too. And it was just really wild to see her there because the place we went to is a good 45 minutes from where we live. It's not a place we get to very often. So to see her walk into this event just kind of floored us. We were really surprised, no doubt about it.
I'm pleased because, hey, there's somebody we already know and like and enjoy, and she's delving into this too. So we have something else to talk to her about.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So that was great.
It was really great. And it was fun having a second way to connect with the couple that we've recently connected with. Like you're saying, it was less than 2 weeks ago, just before Christmas. And both Mike and Anne Marie are really nice people. They're very much into law of attraction. And like you said, we closed the restaurant that day. It was fun. I mean, we were just talk about being on a high vibrational level. We were on that level the entire time that we were talking together, and to the point where when they were pretty much kicking us out, I didn't realize how late it was. I had lost track of time, which is what happens when you're having a great time.
That's right. That's right.
So it was great.
So that's
a good win.
Good start.
Absolutely.
One that you may have shared with your listeners as far as something that I asked the universe for, but I'll do it, share it from my own perspective. I'm a New Englander, born and bred, love winter, especially when I don't have to work in the winter. I can stay inside when I want to, and we live in a complex where they plow and shovel so we don't have to do the work, so that I can really enjoy it. And prior to Christmas, I asked for snow for Christmas. I am very much a white Christmas lover. But I was not specific as to when the snow should start and when the snow should end. And we were out of town for Christmas Eve and driving back Christmas Day. We left our hotel room in pretty steady rain and hadn't gotten more than 15 miles when it turned into a wintry mix and very quickly into snow and blowing snow and reduced visibility dramatically. Luckily, Walt was driving. He's much better at handling this than I think I would have been. And I got the snow I asked for, but not quite the way I had hoped, but had not verbalized or really been specific even in my thinking. So that my caution to the listener is, by all means, put out your hopes and your dreams and your wants and your desires, but be as specific as you can be, because you may get almost, but not quite what you were expecting.
Yeah, that snow was coming down pretty good. I mean, if there had been a good-sized wind out there, that would have been blizzard conditions, because at one point we got visibility of about, 20 feet, something like that. We're moving at about 15, 20 miles an hour because you couldn't see anything. It was crazy. But we came through it.
It was a little scary.
A little scary, yeah.
We questioned whether we should turn back, but luckily you had studied the radar and the weather report and knew that we were catching the tail end of the storm, so that we should be driving through what we were in pretty quickly, which we did.
Yeah.
And by the time we got back to Connecticut, I don't know if I said we were driving from Rhode Island, so it's about normally a 2-hour ride. It only took us about an extra 15, 20 minutes because of the snow. But we got back here and the sun actually popped out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So,
I was surprised how quickly we got back.
Different.
I mean, considering how it seemed like we were going to be driving at that slow speed forever, the fact that we only added another 20, 30 minutes was kind of surprising, really. But, hey, it worked out great.
Yeah, it was. It was. But we got home and found that Santa Claus had been here while we were away, and we sat down and had a nice breakfast and then opened our Christmas gifts from each other and other family members, and it ended up being a very nice day.
What Louise is hinting at but not actually telling you is that we have a rather interesting and fun tradition in which we go to bed, and when we wake up, there are actually stockings that are filled, which I didn't fill, which you can do the math. And the really cool part, the really cool part is watching Louise open a stocking that Santa has filled, because she acts like everything is a brand new surprise out of nowhere. It's wonderful to watch. It just picks your whole spirits up. Look what he gave me. That's what she's going through. She's pulling out things like toothbrushes, and oranges and things like that. Oh, it's great.
Santa knows what I like and what I need. So.
I mean, just funny, just really funny. So that's become our annual tradition. And it's a lot of fun. So it isn't just for kids, ladies and gentlemen. It's for anybody who has a light heart and willing to play around, because that's what you do so well. It's great. I was trying to think about. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. I was trying to think about what some of the wins are that I've experienced. I know one of them is right now. I got the call from Cindie about, it was about 35 minutes ago that she couldn't do the show, which left me about 25 minutes before the show to figure out what to do. And you volunteered to jump in at the last minute. I said, oh, wow, that's a win. That's a great win. Not having to do the show myself, that's a big, big win. So there's win number one. Another win is that we have here in the Northeast, particularly since Christmas, we've been experiencing a real cold snap. Anyone in the Northeast, you know what I'm talking about. Yesterday, actually, I believe we woke up to -3 degrees, which for Connecticut is pretty darn cold. I did sneak a peek at what was going on where I grew up, and it was actually a lot colder there. But nevertheless, -3, that's cold enough for me. I think it's cold enough for you. And the win is that we're in a nice warm house, and that's really the best part. We don't have to be out in the cold. We've gone out. We did go out yesterday to get some shopping done, but for the most part, we've been able to just stay tucked in, and that's a really nice thing to be able to do. So that's one of my wins for the day. So let's talk a little bit about what you and I were talking about yesterday. We were talking about The Vortex. We're going through The Vortex by Abraham Hicks. We're just in the early stages of the book. We've only been doing it for a few days now. And we had some really interesting discussions last night, particularly, about how what Abraham Hicks teaches affects the way we understand the relationship between the physical world and the non-physical world. And that non-physical world, that's one of those topics that for many years, whenever I would get exposed to something that came from, say, a religion or from some mystical viewpoint or some sort of metaphysical system, it inevitably left me feeling lack. It left me feeling dissatisfied. It was a very common experience for me to not feel resonance with whatever the teaching was. In fact, the event that we went to with our newfound friends had sort of a new age feel to it. And, I mean, parts of it were good. Parts of it, I was just kind of cringing inside. It just didn't feel right at all. So that's like an example of what I mean. And one of the reasons I've really enjoyed Abraham Hicks is that, as I mentioned to you yesterday, everything that I read in there resonates with me. Everything that I see in the workshops resonates with me. And Louise, you know better than anybody that for the longest time, I avoided all metaphysical stuff. I avoided anything with a spiritual context, mainly because I just felt so frustrated by none of it fitting. None of it, a lot of it just not making any sense. A lot of it just contradicting itself all over the place. So for me to find something that I really like, that's been pretty darn good. I don't know how thoroughly it resonates with you, but I love the fact that it resonates with me.
Mm-hmm. Well, just to let the listeners know, Walt's the more avid reader and follower of Esther Hicks. I sort of am on the periphery for a variety of reasons, but I have witnessed how reading the Abraham books has helped you, has connected and allowed you to make some dramatic changes in your life, which have obviously then affected me, and always in a very positive way. So our experience is different only because I'm not as involved with the podcasts, the recordings, the videos, and the books as you are.
True. Yes, that's very true. And the fact is that, again, filling in some blanks for people, when I first started to become interested in it, largely because of being exposed to The Secret, the movie and the book, at that point in time, I was in a pretty depressed state and needed to climb out of it. And In fact, you and I had a little routine that you would do every once in a while. You would come over and kind of sit on my chest and grab me by the shirt and say, "Snap out of it."
Yeah.
Which was a way to kind of
get him
shake
to
it
laugh
up.
briefly and help him refocus, but only briefly. And it's this work that has allowed you to move and stay in a much more positive, upbeat, life force flowing attitude.
True. I mean, I've actually had to do the work, obviously. It's been up to me to want to move the needle. And I did want to move the needle. Once I understood what was going on, I didn't realize I was that depressed. I think I'm pretty sure I told you about that I didn't feel it. I wasn't feeling much of anything at the time. I had completely cut myself off from so much of it. But once I realized that what you had told me was true, because you kind of cornered me one day and said, everything that comes out of your mouth is negative. And I said, what? And I had to think about that for a while. Sure enough, after I examined it for a while, I realized, wow, a lot of the stuff coming out of my mouth is negative. And I didn't like the fact that I was doing that now that I knew about it. So that the best outlet I knew at that point was the Law of Attraction, Secret Abraham Hicks stuff. So that's the one that I started to focus on. And it took a while. It took a while to come out of it. It took a while to change the patterns. Like I've been telling my other co-hosts a lot recently how in the early days there, I didn't even realize I could move my own emotional set point. That's a key Abraham Hicks concept, the emotional set point being something that you can move, that you can change, you can shift simply by focusing on better stuff than on less good stuff. And I didn't know you could do that. So, in fact, I remember I give you credit a lot. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I give you a lot of credit because you're the one who suggested to me, well, you take your walks. Why don't you, while you're out on your walks, go... while you're out, explore nature. Not just from afar, but look at it up close. Go look at flowers up close. Go look at plants and trees, and look at the animals, and just appreciate all the detail and all the finer aspects of it. And so I tried doing that, and it took a while, but that was the starting point when I finally began to realize, yeah, I really could control my own mood. That surprised me, because up until that point, I didn't think that was possible. I did not think it was possible for me to actually control what I'm feeling at any given time. I thought I was subject to the whims of, whatever our circumstances were, and that's how I was going to feel, and that's the way it was. So it was quite a revelation.
Well, also, I remember that I think before the emotions changed, and I may be remembering this incorrectly, we started with just trying to put the law of attraction into practice and started with parking spaces.
Yeah, that's right.
That when we went out to the grocery store or wherever, we were going to get, we would intend or envision getting a parking space close to the door or close to wherever it was we needed to be.
Yep.
And lo and behold, that started to happen. And there was some disbelief or resistance to believing that we could make bigger things happen.
Oh, yeah.
And then started realizing we had already done that in our past, way back and not so far back, not realizing we were using, intenting the law of attraction.
Oh,
and,
yeah, when you consider that
looking for positives.
Yeah, when you consider that it's a universal law, that it has always been and always will be, then of course we were using it. We just didn't know it. We were doing it by default.
Right, and didn't have a name for it.
Right, yeah.
But, yeah, it's been interesting and fun for me to watch your progression as you've found things. I think even before Abraham Hicks? You'll have to remind me. We started finding ways to bring the law of attraction or at least positive thinking into our lives as a couple. And we started doing 3 good things. At the end of the day, some people call it gratitudes. We just called it what 3 good things happened to you today. And we would share with each other what had happened. And I remember one of the books that you were reading said to choose at least one and go into more detail about what happened. And we just sort of did that naturally as a way to continue our conversation with each other.
Right.
And our excitement as to what did happen, to go into detail and be specific and share that.
Oh, yeah.
And we did the alphabet game. There's a game, folks, we started, that summer that we first met each other.
Yep.
And we're traveling long distances. It's a game that kids have played for years. You pick a topic, and depending on how many players, you start one, the first person takes the letter A and applies that to whatever the topic it is. It could be models of car, movie titles, songs. For us, it was positive words, and we played that back and forth.
Yep.
So we found ways separately to do our journey in this and to bring it together. As we are now, we're back to, as you said, reading the books, taking turns reading the book, parts of the book out loud to each other. And I think it was last night, you said we only read one page, but we probably talked for almost an hour about things that what we read triggered for us as far as questions or experiences. And we ended up having a really good discussion about that topic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a really good discussion. And you're right. The source, by the way, for the three good things and for the other positives that we were doing, the longer expanded version, that was actually Sean Aker, because it was shortly after I read The Secret and saw The Secret, like within a year or two, that I discovered Sean Aker's book in our local library. And he's the one who advocates the three gratitudes. And also, he has actually, I think it's five or seven, I can't remember which. I think it's 5 different activities to do to improve your mood, improve your mindset, get yourself into a positive, happy feeling place. And there are 5 things that he recommends based on scientific study. The positive psychology movement started roughly about 25 years ago, something like that, and he has been a part of it. And so thus he's very well versed in the stuff that the various positive psychology leaders have studied with their scientific studies. And so the 5 things that he picks are the results of those studies, so to speak. Interestingly enough, one of the things that you and I have not implemented, but which he emphasizes the most of those 5, is social connectedness. And I guess the actual exercise is reaching out to somebody, to different people on a regular basis from your social network, just to say thank you for being a friend or something to that effect. But he really emphasizes the power of social connectedness, and certainly even though it's not social connectedness, the connectedness you and I have had has helped me tremendously. Because without that, I'm not sure what I would have done. But it's made a huge difference. So I just wanted to publicly thank you for that.
Well, you're very welcome. And it's been enjoyable going through this journey with you, in that we each bring new information. My background's in psychology, so I bring a lot of that. And you've done a lot of the reading and hunting stuff down on the internet, and been able to say, hey, this has really helped me, or you might be interested in reading this, or I think you brought Sean Aker to my attention, and Mike Dooley. Me, I'm watching their videos and the humor that was in that, so that we enhance each other's experience in this, which, as you said, if you were doing it all alone, how far would you get? And my hope would be that anybody doing this alone, because they're open to it, isn't alone for very long. Other people show up in their lives to help them along the journey. Because it's, as we're reading in the Vortex and other readings, it's all about relationships. And that's how we learn and grow, is by interacting with other people and finding out that, oh, this works. Well, that didn't work so good, or I'm stuck over here in my old behavior or my old way of thinking. What can I do to change that? And hearing what other people have done, experienced, found out, gives us tools in which to do the work we need to do.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And in fact, I also want to remind people, that's one of the reasons that I do the podcast, that now with my 5 other co-hosts, and I'm now doing with my original 6 co-host, because Louise and I started this 5.5 years ago. I don't know if you remember, Louise, we started it on our 13th wedding anniversary. That was the day of the first show. But and we had technical difficulties that day, of course. But fortunately, those are in the past. The good news is that the doing of this show has enabled me and co-hosts to bring people in who have not perhaps the same kind of network, who don't have perhaps a spouse or a close friend that they can do this with. Well, that's why you can tune into the show. That's one of the reasons that the show's been really growing, particularly over the last 6 to 8 months. And if you are listening to the show for the first time, or if this is one of the first times, and you have not yet subscribed to the show, we thoroughly recommend that you do so. It's actually very easy to do. You just go to loatoday.net. You'll see links all over the place for click here to subscribe. It's really easy, especially if you're doing it with your smartphone. If you're doing it with a desktop, in most cases it's going to work fine. If you're using Google Chrome, you may find that all you can see is code when you click on it. And if that's the case, you'll see a link there for an extension that you can plug into Chrome that'll enable you to view the RSS feed, as it's known, so that you can see everything, all the podcasts that are there in an organized manner that people who read English can understand. But that certainly loatoday.net, that's the easiest way to subscribe. On your iPhone, you can also subscribe by going to the iTunes store and just search for LOA Today. Similarly, you can do it in an iPhone by going to your podcast software. Again, there's a little search feature there, a little magnifying glass. Click that. Type in LOA Today, and you'll find us right away. If you are on an Android phone, Samsung or Google or any of the other Android phones, just go to Google Play and, again, search on LOA Today. So it's really easy to find us. Subscribe. And subscription is free, and it's a real benefit because you never miss a podcast. Even if you can't tune in live. I mean, let's be honest, 99.99%, that's not an exaggeration. 99.9% of our listeners listen to the recordings rather than to the live show. And having the subscription to the podcast is the best way to make sure that you don't miss anything. So please do subscribe. If you do want to listen to the live show, that's one of the reasons we're doing it live now, so that people can tune in during the live periods if it suits their schedule. We're on Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and also again at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Each case for 1 hour. It's a different co-host each day, but that just mixes things up real good. And it's an opportunity, if you decide you'd like to listen to the live podcast, to call in. You can actually call in with questions, or you can share your own wins, or just call in to say hello. So feel free to take advantage of that, because right now our live listenership is actually very, very small. We're in single digits for that. Overwhelmingly, people are listening to the recordings, but we'd love to have people call in. So if you happen to be listening live either to this show or to a future show, please call in. The number there, by the way, is on the website, but I'll give it to you here. It's 860-264-5432. So just wanted to get that little commercial message in there, because Louise has actually been doing a good job in terms of getting the word out. We're getting more and more subscribers, in part just from putting that little piece of information out.
Well, that's great.
It is great.
Great.
So getting back to what we were talking about, though, the whole thing about getting into that positive frame of mind has been an ongoing journey. And in those early days, it was kind of tough, but we made the progress. Sean Aker, that was a big step forward when I discovered his book, The Happiness Advantage. By the way, if you haven't read Sean, or if you haven't heard him, do go to either TED.com or to YouTube.com and look for his 10 or 12 minute TED Talk. if for no other reason, then it's going to make
It's
you laugh.
hysterical.
It's really, really funny. It's a good presentation. I love the graph that has meaningless data on it. That was just brilliant. But I won't tell you more about it. You have to actually, watch the talk yourself. I don't want to ruin it, but it's really worth seeing. Very worth seeing. And like I said, it'll pick you up, and it'll also give you some really cool ideas for understanding, especially if you're in the early stages of understanding the law of attraction. It'll give you understanding of the law of attraction in a different way, because Sean actually does not teach law of attraction. He teaches positive psychology. But the two are so heavily overlapped that it almost doesn't even matter. Whether or not he calls it law of attraction is secondary. It's the information that's so valuable. So that's why I really urge anybody who has not checked Sean out to check him out. But
and his manner of presentation, like you said, even if you don't get what he's talking about or aren't ready for that, just his sense of humor will give you a lift while you're watching it.
Oh, yes.
And he relates his own experience, which is real, but from a humorous point of view, which is quite enjoyable. And as we know, laughter and happiness help us expand our brain chemistry and take in new information, and all kinds of good things happen to us physically and biochemically and in a lot of different ways. So I highly recommend him and Mike Dooley. Mike has a great humorous presentation style.
Oh, yeah. Mike, you have a number of videos on YouTube that you can watch, Mike. And plus, if you'd like a little daily dose beyond the daily dose of happy that you get with LOA Today, you can also get something in your email from Mike. Mike has something that he's been doing for many years now called Notes from the Universe. And it's just these little tidbits of ideas about the true nature of reality and metaphysics and so forth. And, it's really well worth receiving because they're always positive messages. They're always good pick-me-ups. Very often the message is programmed to name you by name, so you get something in the email that says, hey, Walt, here's some great stuff that you need to know about because this is only going to make you an even greater Walt than you are, stuff like that. So it's well worth it. I will mention one thing about Sean, though, before we leave Sean behind. I won't tell the story, but I want to give you a taste of what his sense of humor is about. He tells a story about his sister and how he convinces his sister that she's a unicorn. Now, I won't say anything more, but you got to check that one out because it's a great story. That one and his brother-in-law who's in med school and who gets every single disease that they study in med school. Those are two excellent stories. Very funny stuff.
They are.
So getting back to the progression of my development over time, because those were key points in key way stations, key milestones in getting to the point where I could actually start feeling good on a regular basis. And it was one of those experiences kind of led up to us starting to do the podcast. And once we started doing the podcast, you did the first one with me, and then we did it with Mark and Uona for the second one. And you guys all seemed to enjoy it, but I was the one who really wanted to keep carrying it forward, and it became yet another tool toward getting to that positive frame of mind. And I guess why I'm saying all that is it took me a long time to turn it around, probably a lot longer than it takes for most people, but I got there. So I guess the moral of the story is if I can get there, anyone can get there. Because, I dragged my feet for a lot of it. But anybody can do it. Anybody can do it at all.
And you have to be gentle with yourself, for anybody out there. It takes as long as it takes. Some of us have more trauma in our lives, which causes more resistance to change. And some of us are really entrenched in relationships with other people and our lifestyle. That is highly negative. And we've learned well how to negotiate that. We know what to expect. When A happens, we know B is going to be the reaction. We're prepared for it. And to delve into the unknown and ask ourselves to behave differently, think differently, feel differently can be a bit intimidating, and especially if you don't have the support system out there, more mentors and guides to show you what they've done and what life can be like. So it takes as long as it takes.
And as one of the participants at one of the Abraham Hicks workshops, what they call the Art of Allowing workshops, as one of the participants said when they were in what's known as the hot seat, where they get to talk directly with Abraham through Esther Hicks, the participants said, we want to climb into the higher vibrational levels, the happier levels, but it's actually very comfortable in the more depressed levels because that's what we're familiar with. And he was right. It is much more comfortable there. It's a safer place to be. It's something that's so familiar to us that it's going to be so easy just to sink right back down into it. So, among other things, we're trying to...
Well, and it doesn't take... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, among other things, we have to try to overcome our own negative momentum that we built up over the years, and that can take a little time.
And you bring up a good point, because part of that comfort is it's knee-jerk. We don't have to think about it. When you change behavior, and this is the psychologist in me coming up, when you're changing behavior, you have to stop and you have to think about it. And sometimes you have to let the old scripts, the old tapes run through our heads and then insert the new. And you and I have experienced how exhausting it can be initially when we're trying to move that needle, to change behavior. It's got to be very conscious, and it takes a lot of energy. But stop and think, we didn't start out as negative human beings. We were molded into that, and it became knee-jerk. Well, initially moving into the more positive will take energy, but eventually it will become knee-jerk and will become easier and more comfortable because it's become an ingrained behavior pattern and way of thinking, a total lifestyle change, so that it does become easier.
Which it has for me. I mean, that's exactly what's happening. And more familiar. Oh, yeah. It becomes much more familiar. And like you say, it becomes its own momentum because it's gotten to the point now where I don't have to work hard anymore to get into the positive, higher happy ranges, the higher vibration levels, as Abraham Hicks calls it. It's actually pretty easy now. And part of it is, doing the daily routines that include positive attitude, positive emotion building stuff, including our 3 gratitudes, 3 good things, and I have an Abraham Hicks 10-minute tape that I listen to, a recording that just is like this long stream of positive affirmations, which I find easier than actually repeating affirmations. I'd rather just listen to it. But I listen to that.
Oh, you also have your music list of positive songs to listen to when you're on your walk.
Yeah, that's made a huge difference, just listening to those when I'm out. In fact, that's one thing I miss about the cold weather. I'm going to have to figure out a way to get out and get those daily walks in because I'm not getting my music dose like I used to get all throughout the rest of the year. So I got to figure that one out, but somehow I'll get it in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the whole thing about getting that routine going is really the critical thing, I think, especially when you have a lot of negativity you're trying to overcome. That feeling of being held back and being stuck and so forth. It's not a happy place to be, but it's the routine, the positive routine, the stuff that you introduce as a new set of habits. That's really what makes the transition and gets you through the process of reversing that momentum, that negative momentum that you were stuck in for so long. At least that's what worked for me. And I get the impression just talking to other people is probably the same thing for them too. I imagine it's kind of similar to what you ran into when you were a practicing psychotherapist. Your clients, the ones who were determined to make progress, a lot of them probably had to kind of go against, work against some of the negative momentum they built up, and it took a little time. But if they stuck with it, they got there.
Well, that's it. And there's a process that I used to describe to them, and it was that over time, the amount of time between old behavior and injecting new behavior shortens. And first step is just realizing, hey, I'm doing this. I'm talking this way. I've got a negative attitude. I'm complaining about everything, or whatever it is, to not necessarily change it, but just to be aware of, I'm doing this, and then become aware of what else I could put in its place. Maybe drop a list of things and practice with other people. When this happens, well, I can do this, or even when I'm reviewing my day, to stop and think, well, where's the positive in that day? Maybe I got stuck in traffic and I'm complaining about that. And maybe look at it from a different perspective. Being stuck in traffic, at least I was safe. My car was in as good repair as it was when I left for the day. Maybe I was prevented from being somewhere where I might have been in danger, or I wasn't supposed to go that way, or that wasn't supposed to happen. To the extreme, we've heard people talk about, gee, I missed the plane, or I know of two people who were supposed to be at the Twin Towers on 9/11. One, it was his daughter's first day of school, and he decided to take her to school, or to at least be home until she left, so he didn't leave for work at the same time that he normally would have. And the other one decided to work from home that day. Well, those choices saved their lives. People who've missed airplanes and then found out the plane crashed, or had all kinds of, and maybe it wasn't even that dramatic. It was delayed or whatever, and they were spared more negative experiences. So looking for the positive in any experience that we have, to begin to look at life differently.
Yeah, it doesn't get a lot of attention, obviously, because of the traumatic experience that 9/11 was. But most people forget the Twin Towers routinely had 15 to 20,000 people in them every day. That means there were at least 12,000 people who weren't there that day. That's phenomenal. That doesn't happen by accident. You don't have 80% of the entire population not show up for work by accident on the same day that there's a cataclysmic event. Clearly, those people were, in one way or another, guided away from it. So, yeah, that was a big, big positive, and it's one that we need to focus on more, particularly for those of us who are perhaps still traumatized by the events of 9/11. We should focus on that side, because a lot of people, they avoided the whole thing directly. They weren't hurt. They came out of it alive, unscathed. That's like fantastic news. And the simple fact is, you pointed out a few minutes ago, going through our day, every single day there is stuff that happens that can send us on that negative spiral, as Abraham Hicks calls it. Getting into that bad frame of mind just because something bad happens. And if we can remember in each one of those cases to just stop, take a breath, take another breath, and then focus. Well, first of all, notice that we're dealing with something negative, and deliberately refocus our attention onto something else that's positive. And that's where it's good to have like a list of the three good things that happened, or something along that line, so that you can instantly have something as a go-to, as an easy, safe go-to that you don't even have to think about. It's like, well, at least this is going right. At least that's good. At least that's good. Just to get yourself off of that focus, because when you're focusing on the negative stuff, that's what keeps it going. We got to change the focus. Changing the focus turns things around.
And you can do it very presently, being in the present. You and I do it oftentimes. We get in a car, we're going somewhere. It's like, wow, look at the blue sky.
Yes.
There isn't a cloud in the sky. Or look at, for me, it's look at the snow, because I love the snow. But, the flowers, what's in our immediate range of view. We don't have to invent it or pull it from a distance, just looking at what's right here, or I'm breathing today. And even getting dressed for the day. There was a point in my life where I purposely changed what I wore because everything had been, what did they call it? It was nature tones or,
earth tones,
beiges and browns and, pardon?
Earth tones?
Earth tones, yeah. And to me, that signified my depression. I even still have the sweater I bought. That was a pivotal turning point. I saw a sweater on a mannequin in the window in Dress Barn that was all these vibrant colors, which I had never worn or hadn't. I don't think I'd ever worn them because growing up in the 50s, pastels, bright colors were not in fashion. But I bought that sweater and I put that on specifically because I felt better wearing it. I got compliments on it. It looked good on me. I felt good, and I liked my reflection in the mirror. And I actually still have that sweater, and it's probably 30 years old. And it's still in good condition, folks, believe it or not. But just changing that simple a part of my life to adding color to my wardrobe and consciously looking for things and finding out, what colors look good on me. And there are some colors I know aren't the best colors on me, but I really like them. So I wear them anyway.
That's a really good point because there are a lot of people who tend to wear black and white. It's just like a classic color, especially for business suits and so forth. Just wearing black, or dark colors. Why not add some color? Color brings life. It brings a feeling of warmth and excitement and anticipation. It's not just the same old, same old. So, that's a great idea. I hadn't really thought about it in those terms, but adding color to your wardrobe can actually improve your attitude. It's true.
And I think part of it is that the people who see you see color. It brightens their day. Even that brief minute that they walk by, they may not even realize why they feel better in that moment. And they might react to you differently by even just commenting on, gee, that's a pretty scarf, or hey, I really like that tie, whatever it might be. And for a lot of people, I've noticed, and I'm not out in the business world in the traditional sense, in corporate America, but what I seem to see in the stores, at least for women, is black pants, black skirts. There isn't a lot of color, and that may have become the uniform of corporate America. But I would encourage anybody in that situation, if they're finding that overall their attitude or their demeanor during the day is heavy and burdensome and somewhat depressive, throw on a pretty scarf, a necklace, earrings for women, a man, a bold tie, and see what happens. Mm-hmm. See how you feel. See how people around you react. Start a trend in the office, wearing a bit of color.
In fact, it's a little...
I think at one point there was more color in fashion for business than there is now, and I don't know what happened. But let's bring it back.
It's a little daring, but something that a man could try if you're somebody who wears business suits every day. Try wearing a boutonniere. A boutonniere will just really surprise people because it'll give you that splash of color. Make sure it's not white, by the way. Let's put a little color on there, yellow, red, something that's not white or black. But wear a boutonniere that's got some sort of color to it. And, especially if you find it hard to be social, to be, if you're not an extrovert like me, I'm an introvert, in a big way. And so if you're an introverted person, just wearing a little color like that will get lots of people stopping to talk to you. You won't have to initiate a single conversation because everybody will notice, oh, wow,
Or even,
are you going to a wedding? What's going on?
or socks for men.
Yep.
Colorful socks.
Yeah, anything that adds color is
that
going to help.
Little bit of color.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's also the fact that it picks you up when you put something like that on, because it's not what you do every day. It changes your routine.
And even just the event of going to buy them and seeing what's out there. If you can look at it as fun, what colors do you like? With socks, it's not so much about what color looks good on you, because it's not near your face or your skin tone to if anyone's into that kind of thing, it doesn't matter. They're on your feet, but you could have bold pattern or bold color. And for men too, like the handkerchief. I don't know if men wear suit jackets anymore to business, and what they call it, a pocket square or something, that little bit of handkerchief that you could have a burst of color there. And you can start out, with a small amount and see how people react and how you feel.
Yep.
Before you go to something bolder.
Yeah, you can always start with the easy stuff.
Ease into it.
Start with the tie. The tie is the easiest one, and just see what kind of reaction you get. And if you don't get enough of a reaction, go to something bolder. Give it a shot.
That's right.
You never know what's going to happen until you try it. And like I said, it's great for introverted people because you don't have to initiate any conversations. They do the initiating.
Do we want to take a couple minutes to talk about smiling and how that changes for yourself?
Smiling
I'm not going to remember the specifics, but our sister-in-law, Iwona, her background's in neurobiology, neurochemistry. And I think she's one of the people that shared with us how smiling changes brain chemistry, and in all kinds of positive ways. And that, was it she or something else we read or saw, said the brain doesn't know the difference between a real, genuine smile and just smiling for the heck of it. That the act of smiling changes brain chemistry, whether it's conscientious or just as a reaction to something.
Oh, yeah.
And that smiling at other people, they've done studies that, what is it? Is it 15 seconds if you hold the smile, or it's a certain amount of time if you're smiling at another person? They can't help but smile back. I don't care what kind of mood they're in. It's just humanly impossible if they are continually looking at you.
Right.
It's almost like the yawn reflex. If you yawn in front of somebody, they end up yawning. We find it even with our cats. We yawn, the cats yawn, or vice versa. There's they're called sympathetic or empathetic reaction, that if somebody does that, whether you are aware of it or not, you will do it too. So that when you're walking the corridors at work or in the grocery store, walking through a parking lot, if you just make brief eye contact with somebody and smile at them, they will smile back. And in that brief second, you will both feel better, and they may not know why they feel better in that moment, but they do.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, it's almost all the sources that have been telling us that. Sean Aker was the one who came up with the activity where you smile into somebody else's eyes. The basic exercise is you have two people, and they're agreeing to do this thing. They sit facing each other, 2 or 3 feet apart, something like that. One of them is the person who's going to smile lovingly into the other person's face, and the other person's job is to try to keep the stone face as long as possible without breaking eye contact. And when you try to do that, it's almost impossible, unless you're in a really depressed state, it's almost impossible to hold the non-smile state when somebody is just grinning into your face in a loving manner. I have seen it done. I have seen people who are very depressed be able to do it. But even them, you can see like little cracks in the mouth, like it's starting to smile and then they pull it back, and it starts to smile and they pull it back.
Right. They have to consciously stop it.
Oh yeah, you have to work really hard. The mind wants to pull the body into a smile. And who was it that did the study at the hospital or hospitals where they encouraged the staff to do this bit of smiling when you get within a certain number of feet of somebody coming the other way, to just beam a smile at them? Yeah, I don't remember the study, but Ioana was the one who told us about that one. Yeah, that was huge.
And it was a study that was done, and they found that scientifically that people's blood pressure reduced, people's attendance at work improved, because it was in a hospital. Patients' recovery was, they reported less pain, they recovered better, there was a reduced rate of recidivism. The employees reported feeling better about their workplace, that it just has ripple effects all over the place. And it's just as simple as a smile.
And I could be wrong. I think the study was actually at a hospital in Hawaii. I may be wrong about that. But it was specifically done at a hospital that was going broke. They were in bad financial condition. And
that's right.
A person came in a top position. I don't remember if it was the CEO, but it was somebody who was in a top position, in a position where they could actually put this kind of change into motion. And they called a big meeting of the entire staff, and at that meeting, they asked everybody to engage in the activity of smiling as they passed people. And the rule was this: if you were passing somebody and you were at least 10 feet apart, at least recognize and nod to them. And if you were as close as 5 feet, or if you were passing them, then you had to smile at them. And the interesting thing is, everyone except the doctors was willing to do it. The doctors felt this was beneath them, that they had much more important things to do, because they were there to actually heal patients. They didn't have time for all this smiling nonsense. But the funny part was that the rest of the staff did it anyway, and the doctors found themselves starting to do it even though they had no intention of doing so. So the smiling became contagious. And in fact, it became so contagious that one of the big problems the hospital had was that they were losing doctors. Doctors now were deciding to sign on for additional stints. And the reason that they gave for staying was it was such a pleasant work environment. Whereas before, they'd been leaving the exact same work environment where there was no smiling going on. It was the act of smiling that made the environment a more attractive environment to work in. And the bottom line is, the hospital turned it around completely. They not only stopped losing money, but they became very profitable. They ended up cutting costs, as you pointed out. The rate at which patients were able to heal and leave the hospital improved dramatically, and just across the board, everything started to work well. And so I think it was within like a 1 year or 2 year period, the whole hospital turned around. Very cool story.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep.
All with a smile.
All with a smile. It's amazing what a smile can do. It's a very powerful thing. What's even more powerful is laughter. And I'd go into laughter, except we only have about a minute and a quarter left, so we really don't have enough time to go into laughter. But the one thing I will say about laughter, as powerful as smiles are, laughter is like 10 times more powerful. So anytime that you want to do something with a smile and you want even more oomph behind it, laugh instead, and you'll get 10 times the power out of it. I'll just say that much because we're running out of time here. I do want to remind people, once again, if you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe to the podcast. And please share us, too. Share us with people that you know who are into law of attraction. Most people who are into it know at least one or two others who are into it. And we want to spread the word about the show so that more and more people can subscribe and follow us, because the people who do subscribe and follow, they're really enjoying it. But I want to thank you, Louise, for sitting in. It's been a pleasure doing it with you again, and we'll have to keep you on as our backbench supporter in case other people can't join in. So thank you for doing the show.
Oh, you're welcome. It was very enjoyable.
And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.